Hello, farmers, and welcome to the harvest season. My name is Al, and you've just got me again this week. Obviously, life is quite busy for many people, and so we're just going to keep this one reasonably short with a couple of bits of news, and I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive into the recently released Story of Seasons: Pioneers of Olive Town Japanese trailer. And yeah, probably spend some time thinking up ideas of what could possibly be happening and speculating. That's the word, speculating about things. And yeah, let's see how that goes. So first of all, what I've been playing the last couple of weeks, I've been playing a lot of Fall Guys again on my PS4. I actually recently put in and got a reservation for a PS5, but that's not come yet. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, and then I will start playing the new Spider-Man game. But I can't play that until I've got my PS5. Obviously, very difficult to find a PS5 just now, but I do have a reservation, which I should be getting in the first week or two of December. We'll see how that goes. I've also been playing a bit of Pokemon Sword and Shield, playing with on the recent raid events. And I tried playing Stranded Sails, but I found that when I started up, it wouldn't let me have a name that was less than 3 characters, and I couldn't decide what to put my name as if I couldn't put my name as Al. And so I just closed the game. I'll have to try it out again sometime. I did buy it, so I will play it at some point. But it's a bit annoying that I can't use my name in that game. And why does it need to be 3 characters minimum? That seems like such an odd restriction. Anyway, yeah, so that's what I've been playing. Not a huge amount, not much farming. I'm currently looking forward to Stardew 1.5 coming out, and I've got a plan for what I'm going to do with Stardew. I've got a long thing I'm going to try out once 1.5 comes out. I'm going to try an interesting idea that someone suggested to me, which was playing 1 day in Stardew every day. Just 1 day every day. It's like a reverse speed run. I think it was Ryan that suggested that. Thank you, Ryan, for that idea. So I'm planning on doing that, presumably in the new year, whenever Stardew comes out on Switch. The Stardew 1.5 update comes out on Switch. I'm planning on doing that. And there's obviously a lot of games coming out soon, but I'm not kind of playing a huge amount just now. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how things go. Life is busy. You know what it's like. Speaking of Stardew, let's get into the news. So we've got one piece of news about Stardew 1.5, and that is that Concerned Ape has tweeted saying that the update is in the quote home stretch, which sounds like all the content is done and he's just going through tidying things up, making it nice and polished and getting rid of bugs and that sort of stuff. So hopefully that won't be too long. That was tweeted on the 13th of November. So I wouldn't be surprised if we got some news by the end of the year about when that's coming out, but we'll see. Presumably it will be coming out on consoles later than PC, as with every other update, but hopefully not too long. I believe a big chunk of the time was because the last time I believe Stardew was still being published by someone else, and I believe after the 1.4 update, they said that would speed up future ports. I don't know whether that'll actually happen or not, but we'll find out. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. A Stardew update is always good. I'm sure we'll do an episode on that when that has been released as well. The next piece of news is that Everafter Falls, which we've mentioned before, has launched their Kickstarter. So this is a really nice looking farming simulator with quite a few RPG elements in it. The art style in this is really nice, really simple. Like, your characters don't have arms; they just have hands, like little circular hands, and the characters look like their bits of their body aren't like properly connected. But I really like that art style. Yeah, it looks really fun. You have an animal that follows you around and can do things and help you around the place. So that's interesting. They can like I don't know whether it is instead of tools or as well as tools, but they can certainly uh, dig for you for planting and then water the plants once you've planted them. I believe there are other abilities you can get as well, but that's really good. Y- Examples of other abilities that you can get. They say you can teleport. Uh, they can learn the teleportation. So obviously that will be an end game ability. You can also send your pet back to town to sell off your inventory, which is good. And so, yeah, presumably there are lots of other ones as well. They have quite a large selection of crops, which looks good. And again, all of the art styles of these crops look great. They have quite a few tree crops as well, including apple, avocado, cherry, durian, mulberry, starfruit, oranges, toto nuts, and what they're calling wurple. I do not know if that is a real thing or not. It doesn't look like a real thing. It looks like it's made up. Um, and then there are also mushrooms that you can get as well. They have a lot of one thing that I obviously love in games is they have a lot of automation. You can craft drones to help you with things. Which the good thing about this is that it doesn't unlike sprinklers, they don't waste ground space, which is nice. You can craft lots of different types of drones. So that looks good. It's also got multiplayer split screen co op, and I believe they plan to at some point add online co op, but at this point in time, that's not going to be for the first release. Obviously, they have animals and stuff. They have their version of a kind of Harvest Sprite type thing. They have pixies. Um, it looks like the pixies don't really have much of a personality, though. They're more kind of tools. Um, They can harvest resources like wood and stone without destroying the tree or rock, which is interesting. But yeah, it looks like you catch them rather than befriending them like other similar things in similar games. Yeah, there's also a card game in there. You can collect cards to gain power ups. There's a really nice, a decently sized map. Yeah, there's loads of other things as well. It has good character customization, which is obviously good. I can see 6 skin tones, uh, a bunch of different hair styles and colors, and you can obviously change your clothes and your animals' colors as well, which is good. And lots of customization for your home, fishing with a fishing mini game, lots of different fish, all with great designs. There's also uh, a bunch of dungeons with combat in them, and that's where the RPG element comes in. So it looks like a really big game with lots of really interesting things. There's crafting and yeah. So if you're interested in that, it has 2 weeks left on it. I think it came out just after I released the last podcast, so just 2 weeks to go. It's nearly funded at as of recording. So yeah, that's good. If you're interested in that, I highly recommend it. It looks like a really good game. So yeah, have a look at that. Link will be in the show notes, obviously. So that's most of the news. The only other thing we've got in the news is there was a new trailer for Story of Seasons Pioneers of Olive Town. And I wanted to do a bit of a deep dive into that and see what new stuff would come out. New stuff was announced, and what maybe wildly speculate about what these things might mean. So that's how it is. The trailer will be in the show notes, so obviously you can go and have a look at it. Bear in mind that it currently has only been released in Japanese. And yeah, so I'm just gonna go through things that I've noticed and I've seen other people notice in the trailer. Obviously, I don't speak Japanese, so I've had to have some help with this. So first of all, is that a lot of the things look much more similar in terms of how they work to Trio of Towns, rather than the more recent games like Doraemon and the remake of Friends of Mineral Town. because obviously Friends of Mineral Town, although it was a remake, mostly kept the same mechanics. It didn't change up things with some of the newer mechanics that you've seen in newer games. So an example of that would be in Trio of Towns, you can make your animals create more than one of their byproduct. But in Friends of Mineral Town remake, you went back to only being able to do one, unless I've missed something. So in this game, that is back, which makes sense because it's a brand new game. The building. So if I think we've discussed this before, where you've got a really large area. We don't know how big at this point, but to me, I think it's really, really big. And you explore it and you find things, and the way that you get your coops and barns is that you find abandoned buildings. It looks like the buildings are specific to different things. So, for example, in the trailer, they come across a building and they turn it into a chicken coop. It doesn't look like they had an option to change it into something else. So, it is interesting. You seem to find the specific buildings for specific things. The chicken coop that they made, when they found it, they needed to use 20 branches, 20 stone, and 30 weed to repair it. And then they had a chicken coop. So, that's interesting in that obviously you have to repair it. It doesn't seem too expensive. It doesn't seem like it. You obviously don't have to use any money because you're not buying it from anyone. You seem to be repairing it yourself. So that's interesting. I don't know whether you find multiple or whether you can upgrade the one you have. Because certainly in Trio of Towns you could build more. You could also upgrade them, but you could build more. And in both Friends of Mineral Town and Doraemon, you just had one. You could upgrade it, but you only ever had one. You couldn't get a second coop or barn. So it'll be interesting to see how they're going with things. I wouldn't be surprised if it's as big as I'm thinking in terms of the area that you have. I wouldn't be surprised if you would find multiple of each of them. Or it's also possible that, one example I could think of is once you've found the coop or barn, you then end up with a blueprint and you can build more. That's a possibility. We'll have to find out. We don't have information about that yet. The mines, because I believe there are multiple of them, you can find them throughout your farm. They are kind of a hybrid of the standard one that used to happen in like Friends of Mineral Town and happened in Doraemon, a hybrid of that and the one that happened in Trio of Towns. So Trio of Towns, you had just these nodes in the town that you would hit with a hammer and it would give you a certain amount per day. And obviously the other kind of standard way of doing a mine was that you would go down levels and you'd break up rocks and dig the ground and you would find the ore that way. This way it seems to be combining them. So you have multiple levels. There's rocks on the ground that you can break, and presumably you have to find the ladder to go down to the next one. But also inside that, there were nodes for finding ore for things as well. So presumably there are certain things you get from the nodes, there are certain things you get from the rocks, and that's interesting. I quite like this combination. I was never a huge fan of the mining in Trio of Towns. It always felt a bit lackluster to me, because there was no kind of here's a mine that you can go down and explore and find new things. It was just here's a bit that you can hit with a hammer 5 times and then you're done. It wasn't that interesting to me. So this seems like a nice kind of combining the two. I like the idea of here's a mining ore. But yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Cooking looks pretty standard. The only thing that seems to be different is that they have it looks like there's a two different things to it. There's the flavor and temperature, which presumably the temperature is about, whether I guess it's either, this is a hot or cold, or it could be this is a spicy or not spicy. I'm not sure what that is. It's kind of difficult to tell without understanding the language, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. Everything else seems to be kind of standard, you except, oh yes, no, this is a good point. The cooking isn't immediate; it takes time. So, for example, in the trailer, they bake an apple pie, and that takes 30 minutes. Presumably, it's 30 in-game minutes. Yeah, which isn't a huge amount of time. It would probably be I suspect 30 seconds based on previous games. But it is interesting that takes time. It's not immediate. So there we go. We were shown a bunch of fruit trees, including peaches, grapes, kiwis, and apples. And it looks like you can grow many of them. So it's kind of more like your Trio of Towns style rather than your Friends of Mineral Town, because Friends of Mineral Town you could just have like 6 or something. Here it looks like you can just grow them wherever you want on the farm, which is good. Obviously, there's the town. There's a bunch of villagers. They show some interesting things around. There's a clothing shop. There's a hairstyle shop. So uh, I don't know whether that means there are more hairstyles than you can get at the beginning of the game, or although I don't think we've seen anything about about the character customization yet, but I'll need to check on that. But yeah, there's clothing shop and a hairstyle shop. We saw some more villagers, including the other 4 marriage candidates. One of whom we still don't have a name for at all, which is interesting. They have fish traps for, well, laying and catching fish in, catching shellfish and stuff like that in. So that's something we've not had for a while, although I believe we had in Trio of Towns, I want to say. I lose track of that. Yeah. So I think that's most of the interesting stuff that I've seen. It's an interesting art style. It looks like a progression of the Trio of Towns style, but kind of merging in with some aspects of the style from Friends of Middletown. But your character is definitely much more standard human proportions, shall we say, rather than the style that was in the Friends of Middletown remake. Yeah, that is that's all the actual information we got from the trailer. Now, one thing I would say is that I noticed in one part of the video they have a coop and a barn right next to each other. Now, that could be coincidence. It could be that on the farm they found 2 buildings next to each other that happened to be that. But in the earlier one, when we saw them create the coop, there were no buildings around it. So obviously these could be different things, but it seems coincidental that there are 2 buildings next to each other. So presumably that means that either you can move the buildings when you've fixed them up, which would be an interesting one, or I believe you could do that in Trio of Towns. You could move stuff, move the buildings, or that what I said earlier, that you get like a blueprint and you can build more once you've fixed one up. I don't know. Either way, I would be happy. I like the idea of the exploration of the farm and seeing what you find. But I'm very much I want to design my farm how I want to design it, and I don't really want the game telling me where I can have things. I just want a massive area that I can create however I want, which this does seem to be the case. So in Trio of Towns, you had, here is your farmable area, and you can either take that up with crops or you can take that up with the buildings. Here it looks like you just have a massive grid and you can put whatever you want wherever you want, which I much prefer. We've obviously seen there were paths and stuff like that before, which is nice for designing and separating things. But I also noticed in the trailer there seemed to be stone walls as well, which I don't know whether that is the edge of the farm or whether this is something that you can put down in the farm as well. Either way, really nice. I like this. Yeah, so I really like the look of this. I'm really excited about this. You seem to find the crops in the so I'm sure I remember it talking about the fact that you find crops the the forest, and we see this happening in the game as well, and presumably that's how you find new crops and grow new things. Presumably that means there's a way for you to create seeds then, because it's not as it's not just find a crop and then that's it. We've not seen anything about a general store that has seeds or anything in that, but yeah, I don't know. The other thing I noticed is that this game has sprinklers. I can't remember, and this is where my memory fails me. I can't remember whether there's any Story of Seasons game that has sprinklers. I know that the Friends of Mineral Town had the harvest sprites that you could use to water. And it was an interesting mechanic, but I found it a bit more annoying than anything else because I had to constantly, every week, make sure that all of the sprites were doing something and they took time to do it. So it was interesting, but also not very useful in many cases. It took ages for it to actually become useful, whereas sprinklers is much more useful from my point of view. I much prefer that. I'm very glad at the addition of sprinklers, which I don't remember being in any games. It certainly wasn't in Trio of Towns. It wasn't in Friends of Mineral Town. Pretty sure it wasn't in Doraemon, although I could be wrong. There are so many farming games I've played now that I can't remember which game has what. Anyway, I think that's everything. I'm just kind of slowly watching through the video to make sure I've not missed anything. But yeah, there's another screen where they have 3 barns next to each other, and what looks like a silo. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that you either can move the buildings or you can build new ones after you find one. Either would be interesting. But yeah, that is good. They've also got grass growing in that area, which presumably works the same way it has previously. That if you have grass growing, then the cows can eat that rather than you having to feed them. There seem to be different colours of cows as usual, different colours of llamas, which is interesting because previously I think we've only had the standard llamas, but there seems to be a brown llama here, which is interesting. I think that's all at this point. As I say, the trailer will be in the show notes, so if you want to go and have a look at that, you can do that. I think I'm going to leave the podcast there. As I said, a short one this week, but hopefully we'll have some more in-depth ones for you over the next couple of months as hopefully life kind of slowly returns to normal. Anyway, thank you all for listening. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at the ScottBot. Scott has 1 T. If you want to follow Rochelle, our other co-host, who is not on this episode, you can find her at Miss Delaney. If you want to follow the podcast, you can do that on Twitter as well at THSPod. If you want to find out any other information, all that's on the website, including an email contact form and a link to our Patreon. We are nearly at the beginning of a new month. Always a good time to subscribe to the Patreon. You can find all of those on our website, harvestseason.club. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next episode. Until then, have a good harvest.
The Harvest Season is created by Rochelle Delaney and Al McKinley, with support from our pro farmer level patrons, Kevin and Stuart. Our art is done by Micah the Brave, and our music is done by Nick Burgess. Feel free to visit our website, harvestseason.club, for show notes and links to things we discussed in this episode. Thanks for listening.